Welcome back. You're still watching the Afia Morning Show. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Nathali and Oji Wachuku is still here. Oji, we're about to go airborne.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, well, the plane did not take off, but somewhat it was in the process. A yet to be identified passenger on Enugu Air, operated by Xejet en route to Lagos from Enugu, caused a stir in the cabin when he repeatedly refused to turn off his mobile phone, despite several requests from the pilot in command. Now, due to the development, the aircraft was obligated to return to the apron, and the passenger was deboarded following instructions from the pilot. However, according to witnesses, the passenger refused to disembark voluntarily, leading to, well, he's been forcibly removed from the aircraft by the airport security. Let's take a look.
This was arrest him because tried the bus.
And this appears to be a case of KWAM 3, following the Fuji musician. Next was Comfort Manson, and now we have the Enugu Air male passenger. Hashtag KWAM 3. Joining us now is recent Enugu Air traveler and economist, Dr. Ifediora Amobi. Dr. Amobi, great to have you on.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning and welcome. Oji, I noticed you're holding back a lot of you. Well, let's throw it to the guests now. You watched the video.
Yeah.
We also have to also point out the fact that one of the passengers conveniently removed the fingers of the passenger when he was holding onto the body of the aircraft. I mean, one would say that's in Enugu defending their property, right? In quotes. Dr. Amobi, what's your reaction to this fallout?
Well, it's actually quite unfortunate. It's almost becoming a trend. Yeah. Some people have said, well, these are some people trying to create content and, get into the news. But people also have to be very, very careful because there are dire consequences. When you do things like this, you're breaking the law, you're jeopardizing the life of the people, you're also destroying the state's asset, which is the aircraft. And so, there are legal consequences, there are other social consequences that these individuals have to be made aware of. When you pay for a service, it doesn't necessarily mean that you now own the service. You have to draw the line between decency, conduct, and, what you've actually paid for. I mean, they say the customer is always right.
Right, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, but then there's also a line that has to be drawn.
Yeah.
It's actually quite unfortunate that this has happened here in Enugu. Just watching the video itself, you're torn between either finding it hilarious as well as, looking at the severity of it. For a passenger who, if the airline says and the law says switch off your phones, there's a reason why. Your cell phone transmits frequencies. The airline and the pilot uses frequencies to communicate with the control tower to be able to take off and land. And so at that critical time, they allow you to use your phone when you board the plane, etc. But you get to a point where it has to be switched off so that the pilot gets the right signals and the right, information for takeoff. Because sometimes 15 and 50 can be, misinterpreted. The control tower says, okay, 50, pilot thinks he's saying 15 because there's a lot of interference.
Yeah.
And so passengers have to be made aware. And if it is the law and an audit by NCAA, then it must be obliged.
Not like we're going tech, but so what's the difference between switching off your phone and we have a trigger on our phones called airplane modes, flight modes. So what's the difference? When I put my phone on airplane mode or flight mode, am I still receiving or taking out frequencies which could alter whatever happens in the airspace airplane?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. What airplane mode does is when you put your phone on airplane mode, it switches off things like Wi-Fi access, the ability to now make calls and receive calls, etc., which in a way in itself is a safety measure, and it is good and it works. However, when your phone is on airplane mode, remember you can still play music, you can still watch videos on your phone, even though you don't have signals. The fact that your phone is on and you have that ability to play videos or music means that there's still a frequency being transmitted. And so, as much as it has been minimized by the fact that your phone is on airplane mode, it still exists. And that's why in some countries, just like Nigeria, the law says you must switch off completely. That way, it is drawn to almost zero.
One would now ask, and this is not to confirm that a passenger's phone was on flight mode, because that fact we do not know. But what then is the point of having airplane mode if it still could transmit some kind of frequency?
Yeah, because it has now been minimized. It's not dangerous. It's not as dangerous as leaving your phone on, because of the signals that are required to communicate with the control tower and other points that the pilot and the radio people on the plane use to fly the plane. But it is a safety measure, and it has been certified, worldwide, that it works. And so phone makers have that airplane mode on the phone just as a first step or a first level of
There are concerns as to how the passenger was handled. People on social media are saying he was handled too forcefully, despite the fact that he refused to disembark alone when he was asked, and was asked to disembark by the pilot in command. He refused, and hence the airport security had to intervene. But there are still concerns people have that he was handled roughly, that he should have been handled more professionally, maybe. I don't know what's your take on how he was handled? Was there another way?
Yeah, the fact is that the way you conduct yourself determines the way you will be handled. If you're told to switch off your phone and you switch off your phone and put your phone away, it's the end of the story. If you now decide to fight back, and every time and every step you make to resist will also escalate the move from the authorities, when you're now at the point where you're holding on to the aircraft, you're pulling down, the barriers, you're holding on to the seats, even other passengers are trying to now get your hands off so that you don't, then you must be forcefully, removed. And one of the things the airport security should have is handcuffs. Because once that is done, they put your hands behind your back and they handcuff you to minimize injury to yourself, to others, and damage to the state's assets. So, it's in order. If you fight back, they will escalate, how forceful.
What's your take on tasing people who are uncontrollable? Because I have some people calling for that, but there are also concerns about human rights and the use of tasers.
Yeah, tasers, as much as they can be effective, they can also be dangerous. And when you're in an enclosed space, like an aircraft cabin, you run the risk of the taser spray, getting to other people that shouldn't be. And you don't know who is allergic to what.
So this is taser using the electric shock, more or less, not the actual spray, not the pepper spray, but the taser, kind of putting a voltage, some kind of voltage into the person who is being unruly, whether on air or on land.
Well, that also in itself It's almost like a tranquilizer, shot. If you tase somebody, if you look at the size of that man, you need more than one. So if you tase him and aggravate him even more, because you can't just tase the first time and the person, collapses. If you tase him the first time and he gets aggravated and starts, throwing his fists, you can even, get into more problems. The thing actually is this: arrests should be swift. Somebody refuses, the security agents come in, they try to walk the person out. If you refuse to disembark from the plane, then you've now taken it to another level. If they decide to carry you out or, gag you and handcuff you, that's what you brought upon yourself.
Okay. Let's still talk about conduct. It was KWAM 1, then Comfort, then this individual. Are you perturbed about the Nigerians and their behavior lately? Is this a reflection of what we're going through in the country? People are disappointed and frustrated, and that's the reason why we are seeing these kind of behaviors happen like every now and then.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's easy to target, try and link it to people's frustration in the economy. If you can afford to spend over 100,000 naira to fly from one point of in the country to another, you are not, in my own opinion, you're not part of the frustrated, class or group, right? You dress up in the morning, you're flying to Lagos, you get ready, you get to the airport, you check in, you sit on the plane. You've done everything, accordingly up until that point. Now, refusing to switch off your phone, to me, is not frustration. It's deliberate. Because whatever it is you are discussing should have been, that phone call should have been made before that time. Because as a flyer, that at a point, you have to switch off your phone. So why are you suddenly making a phone call when they're closing the door of the aircraft? What is so important that can't wait for 55 minutes for you to get to Lagos? And why did you make that phone call earlier than that?
What is the place of consequence management in the current aviation crisis? Because we're seeing, a case where people are just doing what they want. Some feel like they've been energized by the Fuji musician, the KWAM 1 case, because of how he was handled, and also Adams Oshomole. In fact, that appears to be the actual origin of this. How Oshomole was basically allowed to continue to move around with everybody else after what he did. They are now further spurred by KWAM 1. He came out and apologized and was let go. So we're seeing a lot of that. What is the place of the consequence management in the recent motopark incidents we're recording on aircrafts?
Yeah. I mean, it is very, very, the consequences are quite dire. The fact is that people do these things and they get rewarded. KWAM 1 was made an ambassador, of some sort. Comfort was given, trips abroad and holidays and money and a job, all sorts of things. This fellow probably just thinks, well, maybe I could also, elevate myself. Or, in as much as we don't know his name yet, he hasn't been identified. There's no statement from Enugu Air. There's no statement from, the passenger himself up until this time, almost 24 hours later. And so, we have to stop rewarding behavior like this with positive reinforcement, because it will just escalate more. If Adams Oshomole was, there were some, punitive measures in his own action. If KWAM 1 also was punished, I don't think, we would get to this point. And we don't know what's going to happen, tomorrow. Because then somebody else might decide, okay, let me, create content and, do that. Because
let go viral.
Yeah. So consequences have to be, dealt with strictly. And you cannot jeopardize the safety of everybody on the aircraft just because you want to be popular, you want to go on TikTok.
Now, some people might be wondering, because the statement has not been released by Xejet, the operators of Enugu Air, but they might be wondering how we found out what happened with that. This was what led to his being bundled out of the aircraft. Well, I did have a phone interview with the Commissioner for Transport, and he was able to reveal that little detail, that this was because he refused to turn off his phone as the plane was taxiing. About to take off, he was still saying he would not turn it off even when instructed by the pilot in command. So, just on a lighter note, what do you think about the passenger that peeled off the unruly passenger's palm from the body of the aircraft? The way he did it, I'm sure our producer would show us that video again for emphasis, because in all of the chaos, we see a passenger say, no, you're not going to wreck this plane, you're not going to be the death of me, and then he peels off the unruly passenger's palm from the body of the aircraft.
Yeah. Well, the fact actually is that, that's why I said, it's partly funny and partly serious. Maybe sometime during the launch of the Enugu Air at the time, somebody high in authority must have made a statement that this is our own, this aircraft, that kind of
statement thing. Actually.
Right. Even and so people take it literally, they take it seriously. This is,
I own this too.
Yes, I own this too. And so why should I get off? Why should I switch off my phone? And it's an attitude, that, like I said earlier on, you can't say because you've paid for a ticket, therefore you own the resource. No, it's a service. And you must conduct yourself, with very, very high decorum.
NCAA insists switching off mobile phones during takeoff and landing, but in your view, are passengers adequately educated on the reasons why this law exists?
Not 100%, and it's not just a Nigeria problem, it's also a global problem. In other parts of the world, and even as we speak, there is technology that exists. They call them, jammers.
Yeah.
Right? In some countries, the airlines invest in these jammers. And so what happens is that before takeoff, the pilot announces, or whoever it is announces, switch off your phone, and then 30 seconds to 1 minute later, they press the button. And if you're on the phone, it just disconnects because signals have been jammed. Now, the reason why it's not widely used, it is actually very, very effective because all phones get switched off, whether you're using it, whether you're texting, everything just goes dead. The danger here, which they have found out, is that as much as it does that, it also blocks the cockpit. Yes, from the cockpit, so they can't communicate with the control tower within that period of time. And so the control tower is trying to reach them and give them critical or essential information, which they have missed because they have jammed the signals for everybody else. And so they're trying to refine that technology in such a way that it can only affect, the cabin and not the cockpit.
In the area of consequence management, should the yet-to-be-identified male passenger be arrested for what he did, especially as we're seeing the more prominent ones still roaming the streets? Should he be arrested in accordance with the NCAA law?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The only danger here now is that you've already set a precedence. So if you arrest him, everybody will now say, but
they'll go back.
What happened to right? Why did you leave these ones out? Why did you reward them and now arrest them? Then they'll now start bringing in, he's Igbo, he's that. I don't know who he is or where he's from, but people start bringing up all these things. He's Muslim. Because he's this or that. And it now creates a whole different social media argument.
Could he have been upset about how he was told to turn off his phone by the pilot?
Absolutely not, because he should know, like I said, this is part of takeoff and landing procedure. So you don't even have to wait for the announcement. You've gotten on the plane, maybe you've called your pickup person on the other side, you've told your family, okay, I've boarded, I've seated, I'm switching off now, and you switch off. Like I said before, there's nothing that can be so crucial at that particular minute that you have to make that phone call. Suddenly you realize that, I have to call my banker, I have to call my stockbroker, I have to call, total bullcrumb.
All right, let's move away from there now. You flew Enugu Air just a day before. This man did, because you were on the Sunday flight, Enugu Air, right?
I was on Sunday flight, yes.
Sunday flight. This was just hours before we had KWAM 3 board the flight, all right?
Yeah.
How would you describe your experience flying Enugu Air? What circumstances? Because I know that, lots of people are still they're trying to test the waters, they're not too sure, they're still trying to learn to trust the airline, and you flew there. So tell us about how that decision was reached and what your experience was like on the aircraft.
Well, thank you. The decision was actually, it was reached by accident, and I put quote unquote there because it wasn't really an accident per se. But what had happened was that I had a ticket from another airline, which I was supposed to use from Lagos to Enugu, and for personal reasons, that flight got cancelled. And so we were all stuck at the airport in Lagos on Sunday. And then we heard that Enugu Air was still boarding and hadn't taken off because other airlines had already left. Ibom Air had left, Enugu Air Peace and the rest of them. And so it was like Enugu Air came to our rescue, just being there. So we all rushed across and bought tickets and filled up the remaining spaces on the aircraft. And so that was how I accidentally got onto Enugu Air. My experience was amazingly positive. And it wasn't just me. There were other passengers who had also expressed the fact that, they really liked the ambience. One man even said it was an upgrade from what he was used to flying. We had, very, very good, and I mean very, very good service in terms of the welcome, the attitude, boarding, and everything from the crew. The flight crew was just amazing. It was comfortable. It was smooth. Takeoff, excellent. The flight there was no hitch. We landed, seamlessly in Enugu. The disembarkation was, very, very well organized, row by row, etc. And it was a pleasant experience. And as a matter of fact, as I was getting off the plane, I said to myself, now suddenly I have an airline of first choice. As much as I have loyalty schemes with other airlines and I get mileage and so on and so forth, but Enugu Air left a very, very positive taste in my mouth.
So what more do you think they can actually do it's a new baby. They always treat a new baby as new, right? But when you start getting older, they'll start leaving you to help yourself by yourself.
Well, those ones you have little or no control over. My only concern with flights to Enugu is the timing. And I was pleasantly surprised that there was at least an 11 a.m. flight from Lagos to Enugu on Enugu Air. Because what you find out and what has happened or used to happen and still happens is that a lot of the flights leave early in the morning. So between 6:45 and 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning, all flights have left for Enugu. And if for some reason you want to go to Enugu, you're stuck wherever you are, whether you're in Abuja, or Lagos, or Kano, or wherever it is. And so I would like a situation where we have staggered timings. Yes, we have afternoon flights, evening flights, just like we used to do during the days of Sosoliso. You could fly to Lagos in the morning, finish your business, and be on the 6:30 flight back into Enugu. It will also help the tourism industry here in Enugu, because we spend so much on hotels and taxis and feeding and all that just to spend the night in Lagos to be on the next morning flight. Money that could have been spent here, if we had arrived. Even if you're going back to Anambra or Ebonyi or Abia, you still spend the night in Enugu. And so it is revenue, for Enugu. Yeah, but other than that, what else can they do? Increase the frequency. I know the state is going to invest in more aircraft, get into more routes. I heard there's now Enugu Owerri coming up
Is that not too short?
Well, it depends on the aircraft that they're going to use. Yeah, I know they can use the big aircraft, but some,
some people are in a hurry for Enugu Air to get its own, its own operations. They want to see Enugu Air, buy Enugu Air, not buy Xejet, because they feel like they want Enugu Air to be independent finally. When you saw, with regard to the branding on the aircraft, was it uncomfortable for you seeing operated by Xejet, maybe on the food pack or maybe on the aircraft itself? Did you want to see Enugu Air and Enugu Air alone?
I wasn't really too hung up about that. I would like to see Enugu Air 100%, Enugu Air. However, it's still in its infancy. It needs to be handheld. I wouldn't be in a hurry because of safety and other issues. Pilots have to be trained, flight attendants have to be trained. A lot of things have to be put in place for you to be an operator. I don't know whether you also need to have a separate operating license from, NCAA and the rest of them for that to happen. And so, as long as the services or, the service is seamless, the timing is right. When they say they're leaving by 1 o'clock, they leave by 1 o'clock. As long as all those things are happening right now, I think people should actually complain. When the time is right and when it's early, and besides, we don't even know what kind of service level agreement Enugu Air has with Xejet.
Right.
It could be 1 year, it could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, it could be 10 years. But whatever it is, it's a contract. And that contract has to be seen through.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Amobi, for joining the show this morning. We'll continue to watch and see the fallout of KWAM 3, if there'll be an official statement. And hopefully, we hope passengers enjoy their flight.
Be swept under the carpet.
Right. Well, let's watch and see if this reminds Nigerians about KWAM 1. And perhaps one day he'll be brought to book. We'll go on a quick break now. When the Morning Show returns, we'll be returning our searchlights to the Igbo Global Icon Awards coming up really soon. We're joined by a special guest to tell us more about it in just seconds. Stay tuned.